What up, Doe? Welcome to the latest episode of The Renaissance Man, sponsored by the New York Post. I'm your host, Jalen Rose, and you guys hear me talk so very often about how I love to get in the kitchen and get down, on the grill and make some food for my family and friends and buying food, and it's just a labor of love to me. But now I got to take a back seat. The next gentleman on the show, he's not only a restaurateur, but he's a television star. I watch your show. I see you blowing up on Netflix. Congratulations. The host, the producer of Ugly Delicious, David Chang, is joining me. Welcome to the program.
I'm so very honored to be on your show, Jalen. Thank you for having me.
I appreciate the love. So I had to make the transition from being on the floor to now being in front of the camera. What was it like for you to do the same in your profession?
I'm still in transition, because being a chef and being a personality, I can only imagine how difficult that must have been for you, right? To think in a completely different way. And, what makes you talented as a chef is actually going to be terrible as a personality. So the one thing that I think I've tried to focus on, which could be considered an Achilles heel as well, but certainly a strength, is just to be transparent and as honest as possible. And, that's what I try to do with my food. And as I learn to be a better listener and speak about topics and stuff like that.
Can you explain the concept behind Ugly Delicious?
Yeah, I mean, it sort of started out as a joke because on Instagram, you see all these influencers and all these chefs posting this super glossy lifestyle of all this food that absolutely looks gorgeous. But it dawned on me, that's not how real people eat. And while it looks good, it's not the only thing that's delicious. And in fact, I was like, I grew up with a lot of the foods that I learned to be embarrassed about and then learned to appreciate. And if I look at it from a white perspective, it's ugly as hell. And I was like, it's all about perspective, right? And that's when I wanted to sort of say, there's more than one way to describe this. And a paradox, an oxymoron of ugly and delicious was the most appropriate way to talk about just food that isn't just things that you see on social media, but the foods that are delicious and is beautiful to one person and ugly as hell to another.
Growing up in Detroit, unfortunately in a single parent home, there were times where we had to scramble for meals. So I ate mayonnaise sandwiches and syrup sandwiches and drank sugar milk and sugar water. So when you say ugly delicious, that reminded me of that when I was frying smelts or bologna sandwiches and cutting slits in the side. So what are some of the things that you can recall eating that fall into that category for you growing up?
I just made something today for my wife and my son. It really looks not good. I mean, it's like you take some beans. I took some white beans and I soaked them and then I pureed them. So it looks all gnarly. And I cooked some pork belly, so basically fresh bacon and some kimchi. One of the reasons I love my wife is that's the food that she wants to eat. And when I first met her, I was like, she probably just likes the finest stuff. It has to look a certain way. And again, it's judging a book by its cover. Sometimes it's good and sometimes it's not true. And, it's a very Korean dish. It's a very hardcore dish. And I think in 2020, there's a lot of things that we should be upset about. But one of the things that we can celebrate is having the ability to not be embarrassed about the things that you find to be delicious or how you were raised. I'm sure maybe later in life, you were like, I don't want to tell people I was drinking sugar milk, or bologna sandwiches, but it's like, but nostalgia is a funny thing. Now it's like, you know what? That's what I did. And it brought me happiness and it got me to where I am today. So no, I'm not embarrassed about it anymore. So there's a lot to be learned from your past.
On Ugly Delicious, you also do something that I'm pretty sure a lot of people appreciate. You dabbled in making baby food.
Yeah.
Can you give people out there some tips? In particular, one of my producers, Jamila, who's currently pregnant and can have her baby at any day now?
Well, Jamila, the best tip I have when your child starts to eat solid food is start to give them everything that you don't think they would ever eat because they don't know anything. They've never tasted anything. So you should don't make any assumptions. Like carrots. I don't like carrots, but if you cook them down and you puree them, you don't have to buy the store-bought stuff either. It's like that's something I took a lot of pride in making every meal. I gave things to my son I never thought he'd like to eat, and then you start to get an idea of what he likes. And now he eats just about everything. And I'm very lucky in that regard. But, the thing that I kept on going to is I wanted to basically train my son to like the things that I like to eat. And I think that's what you should do too.
Due to COVID-19, I haven't been able to get out in Champaign and campaign and go whole court at my favorite restaurants. How has COVID-19 affected you as a restaurateur and a business owner?
It's been devastating. And thank you again for supporting WYO. I know that it's near the ESPN offices, and whenever I get a text, I'll be like, oh man, Jalen visiting our restaurant. Wow. I love that. I love that because I've been a huge fan of yours ever since you were a player and all the way to Michigan to your transition to being one of the best hosts out there. So I very much love being able to serve you. And the problem is we're facing an extinction event. And restaurants are banks. People just don't see it. Like 90% of the money that goes into a restaurant immediately goes out to the bakers, the florists, to the community at large. And if restaurants close, man, we're going to have some very negative repercussions. And we've had to shut down our restaurants. We did it proactively before anyone had to, really. And we've reopened a bunch of them. We had to close 2. Which is sad and depressing, but it's our time to make lemonade, and there's no opportunity anymore to feel bad about yourself because everybody in the restaurant industry has been dealt a crap hand. And the reality is, unfortunately, if we don't get help from the government, you're going to see mom and pop shops all the way up to the fanciest restaurants. A lot of them aren't going to recover. So it's the have and have nots. But in this world today, what isn't, about the have and have nots?
For me, I started to realize as I became an adult, the interaction I got in school amongst my classmates, it seemed like I started to get, once I got older, I started hanging out at happy hours and going to restaurants. How about people who used to get that experience like myself, and now we seem sort of deprived of that lifestyle version of what it's like to be at a restaurant and enjoy your friends and just the atmosphere?
Yeah, man, I miss that. I hope one day soon that we'll be able to do that. That's one of the best parts of living, is to be able to eat something delicious, or not even something that's good, just to hang with your friends, drink something delicious, talk shit. I miss that so much. And yeah, you can do that in your backyard and hang with other people, but being able to do that in restaurants, particularly say New York City, like, come on, man, that's what makes New York City the best city in the world, because the dining culture. If you can't congregate with people, man, it's hard to be positive about staying indoors all the time.
What about the difference in the dining experiences? As somebody that's bi-coastal like yourself, having restaurants in California and New York, things closed a lot earlier in Cali. So yeah, a lot of times people going out to eat in New York at 12 or 1, that's when things are closing, and that's when things get started in New York City.
Well, yeah, that's the thing. LA, people go out drinking a lot more ever since ride sharing, right? Uber. The problem with LA is like, oh, I can't drink, man. I got to drive. Now people are just getting drunk. I mean, before COVID, if you talk to any of my friends that have restaurants out here, they're like, wow, ride sharing's amazing. Our alcohol sales are through the roof. And that's how you make your money in any business, really, in restaurants, is the beverage sales. But man, New York City, there's no place like it, because you talk about doing turns per, like, in a busy New York City restaurant, you want to do minimum 3 turns an hour. I mean, in a dinner service. And, you know, as I like to say, man, New York doesn't really get fun until like 1 in the morning. And that just doesn't happen out in LA for sure.
Well, because in New York City, Vegas, Miami, it seems like you take a nap before you go out.
Yeah. But also, you know, I used to go out a lot. And what I loved about it was, like, you stay in on a Friday, Saturday. You go out on the Monday, Tuesday, Wednesdays. And that's when you know who's an amateur or who's not. If you're out someplace at like 3:30 in the morning and it's Tuesday, you're like, more than likely you're hanging out with cool people that are creative, that are, they don't sit at a desk, they're doing something cool. And you can't find that atmosphere outside of New York City.
What are some of the places that people like yourself enjoy when you're in New York City? When you was on the scene, I watched the show now. I know you old and washed up just like me. You retired, and I know you turned in all of the cars that you had. But when you were in the streets hanging out a little bit later, what are some of the places in New York or LA that were I need to be there type of spots?
Man, over the years, there was a restaurant called WD-50 by the great chef Wiley Dufresne, and that was on the Lower East Side. You know, the funny thing is, they're these bars that I don't even know the names of. You know, that's the funny thing. You're like, meet me here, and all of a sudden, the place. You ever see that Seinfeld episode where Costanza shows up at a nightclub, and it's all these beautiful women, and he tries to bring Jared back the next day, and it's like a butcher shop, and he's like, what the hell's going on? That's to me what makes New York so interesting. It's sometimes not even the name of a bar or a restaurant. It's like, hey, you're in some Brooklyn warehouse, and it's the craziest party you've ever been to, and the next day it's like an art gallery. And again, like, that life, that kind of every minute it's going to change in New York City is why I love New York City. I can't give you any specific place, because either I was too drunk and I can't remember, or two, you know, it just doesn't exist anymore. It's just this ephemeral pace that I love.
This week's theme is food is a way to a man's heart. And as somebody that goes to a lot of restaurants, as I mentioned, and being Black, sometimes we order everything well done. And I heard a rumor from Bill Simmons, the Podfather, our brother in common, that Jalen, when you do that, they give you the worst steak in the house. Are stories like that true?
I have seen a lot of those stories actually happen. But you know, it's growing up for me. I think I didn't care how people used to order their meat. And then you work in the profession, and it's about elitism. It's about being in the know. And it came to a point where I would just judge people about the kinds of food they ordered. And we talked about this in the last season of Ugly Delicious, the steaks. And I'm always learning, and I'm always trying to shed some of my, you know, more ignorant ways that I think are enlightened. And one of which is, man, I basically came up with this theory that anyone that eats a well-done steak is a Trump supporter. And I was like, wow, that was stupid, because it took all of 2 minutes to learn that Obama eats a steak well done too. I was like, you know, and you can't judge anything about how somebody wants to eat their meat. So yes, I would prefer not to have someone eat their steak well done. But listen, if you came in, it's you know, that's older Dave. I'm learning. It's like, hey man, if that's how they want it, let's give them the best well done steak they've ever had.
So when you're at a restaurant, you don't own the place, you're out with your friends, you out with your family. What are some of the things you like to order from the menu at one of your favorite spots?
You know, man, it depends. If I'm just going out with some friends, and like, say we're going to a Chinese restaurant or something, you know, I want the things that are not on the menu. You know, like, you got to earn the right to, like, get treated well. And You don't have to be crazy wealthy. You just got to be a fan. Like being a fan of a restaurant is no different than being a fan of a sports team. And to get that access, you just got to show respect. You got to treat people well. And you got to say, like, I want what you think is good. Don't even show me a menu. And being able to cook for guests that are like in it and are just like copacetic, that's one of the best things. Because in the hospitality business, we just want to make people happy. We want to give them the best experience all the time. And when you see a customer come in repeatedly and say, like, I trust you, cook me whatever you think is great, and it doesn't even have to be on the menu. It's like, hey, this is like one of the best things that can ever happen. So I always tell people, if you like a restaurant and you want to be treated well, treat everyone well, and tip well, shower them with love and respect, say thank you, and also just have communication with them. Like, what do you think is good? So I always go off menu. I always like to have chef specials and stuff like that.
Well, I'm glad that you validated something, because I'm pretty sure I don't have to tell you this. People that look like me always order off the menu. We always order off the menu. We mix up sides. We mix up special. Hey, I know that's the special, but I want to get the one you had last week also. But you said something that made my ears perk up. I heard the words Chinese food. Oh, man, I love Chinese food. And I always order something. When I order it for people, they don't really know what it is. I always love to order the shrimp egg foo young patties.
I'll never even have that. Patty, what?
Oh, yes.
I gotta go with you. You gotta show me what this is about.
Yes, it's almost like the episode of one of your shows, I think I saw, maybe it was your mom or your mother-in-law making an egg custard, right? So it's almost right. It's almost like a fried egg. It has onions in it, and it comes in a patty. It's so good. I just had it in New York City. I ordered something from Uber Eats. It is so good. Now I get to turn you on to something.
Done. I'm excited. I mean, that's the thing, is I love ordering stuff that's new and different. Of course, I want the old standbys and a burger or something like that, but man, variety is the spice of life.
I appreciate you spending time, but before I let you get out of here, I have a segment called Gone in 60 Seconds, where we rapid fire some things that I was cooking on, pun intended, because I knew you were going to join the show. First up, ready to do this? We're going to start the clock at 60 seconds, and here we go. What is your favorite munchie?
Oh, man. Sour cream potato chips.
American fried chicken or Korean fried chicken?
I got to go with the OG. That is American fried chicken. That is a big statement from me.
That's a good one. I had to ask that one for myself, for real. Best city in the world for street food?
Best city in the world for street food, I will say Singapore.
Best restaurant for date night?
Bernardin.
20 seconds. You got to pick a cookbook, Patti LaBelle or Julia Childs?
Patti LaBelle, because I don't even know what the hell that would be. That would be amazing.
First it was matcha, then it was turmeric. What's going to be the next big trendy food ingredient?
Soy sauce.
Last but not least, you ain't a real chef unless you have this in your kitchen.
Man, you have a Vitamix.
Vitamix. That lets me know that I'm a halfway crook in the kitchen, because I don't have that, but I will get it. Thank you very much for taking the time. I appreciate the love. And we were supposed to be spending a lot more time at South Street Seaport.
Yeah.
And I'm pretty sure when it's COVID and everything ends, hopefully we get a chance to do so.
It's going to happen. I promise. We'll get there. And I can't wait to serve you well-done steak, the best well-done steak you've ever had.
Well, I'm matured, and once I got a black card, I started getting medium well. Thanks a lot. I appreciate the love.
Hey, thanks, Jalen. Thank you, guys.